Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sophia, and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Emma Lord's newest title, You Have a Match, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for all of your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, we wouldn't be here today. Tonight, we are thrilled to have with us Emma Lord for the launch of her newest book, You Have a Match. Emma Lord is the author of Tweet Cute and a digital media editor living in New York City, where she spends whatever time she isn't writing, either running or belting show tunes in community theater. She graduated from the University of Virginia with a major in psychology and a minor in how to tilt your computer screen so nobody will notice you updating your fan fiction from the back row. She was raised on glitter, grilled cheese, and a whole lot of love. Her sun sign is Hufflepuff, but she's a Gryffindor rising. Joining Emma in conversation is Farrah Penn. Farrah is a writer and editor currently residing in Los Angeles, California. She graduated from the University of North Texas, where she changed her major 3 times before graduating with a degree in creative writing. It was a good choice. When she's not writing books, she can be found creating content for BuzzFeed and talking too much about her dog. 12 Steps to Normal is her first novel. So, without further ado, please welcome Emma Lord and Farrah Penn to the stage.
Emma, this is so exciting. I'm really thrilled to be chatting with you today. I feel like this is a full circle moment for us because we met like in the BuzzFeed community section of the internet, and now we both like have books and we both are writing, and now we get to celebrate your book today, which is extremely fun, even though we've never met in real life.
One of these days, one of these days
things aren't terrible.
We love a full circle moment, though.
We do. We love it. I loved You Have a Match. I read it towards the end of last year, and it was such a sweet, heartfelt, sisterly story with just really authentic characters and smart, funny, quippy dialogue, and you just really get lost in it. And I want to take a second to recognize that Reese Witherspoon of Reese's Book Club chose You Have a Match for their YA pick. Can you talk a little bit about that? That's so exciting.
I can. Now I finally can. Can I just say, everybody, a lot of people who are watching tonight know that I have a very large mouth and that I love to talk. And I've had to sit on this news for like 2 months now.
That's a long time.
It's a long time. So honestly, there's like the part of my brain that is just still just like over the roof, like thrilled, in disbelief, just like shock and awe. And then there's the other part of my brain that is just so relieved I didn't blow it. It became so close. Because there's the funny thing is I have it with me is there's a sticker on the book. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh.
But when the book came, we had to hide it because it was all under embargo. So if you look at my Instagram, I have my hand up like this, or I have like a dessert in front of it.
Oh my gosh, that's
a lot of hiding. In terms of that happening, I just I still am just like not in belief that it's happening, as you can tell from the stammering. Reese Witherspoon is, I think, a lot of people's heroes. But it just there have just been like so many like moments of my life that I can think of that she's impacted, even just in terms of like stories she's brought to life or just like ground that she's broken for women. And it just was like, it continues to be something that my brain cannot wrap itself around. So maybe sometime in the next like 60 to 70 years, we'll see.
I know, it was incredibly exciting, and yeah, you should not get over that news. It's like such fun, exciting news. You Have a Match is set against the backdrop of a summer camp, and it has big Parent Trap vibes. But I think at the core, it it's, to me, when I was reading it, it felt like a book about sisterhood. But I would love to hear in your words how you got the idea and why you wanted to tell the story.
Yeah. So the general sort of like plot is 16-year-old Abby takes a DNA test, and when her results come back, she finds out she has a full-blooded older sister who's 18 months older than she is and lives like half an hour away. And I suppose the inspiration for it sort of came from, you know, you and I both work in digital media.
Yeah.
And at the time, and this was like actually long before TweetCute even sold, or I really like thought that this was like a book that I would be able to write. But I remembered we were covering a lot of things where people were finding half siblings in DNA tests, and like, or just all sorts of kind of like odd family members that sometimes the parents themselves didn't know existed. And I was like, whoa, like we have opened up this whole new just avenue of like just like weird things that people can find out about their lives. And so that was sort of on my mind. And I think the idea actually came to me when I was sitting on the subway with my sister Lily. And I just remember at the time being like, wouldn't it be like so weird if you found a full-blooded older sister? And it sort of stuck in my head as like, that would be a cool book to write one day. And I feel very lucky to have gotten to write it. But at the time it was just sort of like an idea in my head. But for the backdrop, that was, it's in Seattle, and the camp takes place on an island that's sort of loosely based on Vashon Island. And those were places where I grew up in Seattle as a kid. And I had my best friend growing up, their family had a cabin on Vashon Island, and they would take me there, in the summers. And so I had a lot of like summer memories of that. And so it was really fun to get to sort of like revisit both mentally and physically. I did go back and visit them because this was all very pre-pandemic.
When traveling was the thing we did.
Yeah. That's sort of where a lot of the inspiration for the plot and the setting came from.
Oh, that's awesome. I love a subway idea. Like, how many ideas do you think are born on the subway? So many, probably. So your characters, Abby and Savvy, are so different from one another. Abby prefers to, kind of be behind the scenes, whereas Abby is sort of like front and center. I would like to know which sister you're more like, and why you decided to make these sisters so different.
So that's an interesting question, because I do feel like I put a lot of myself in both of the sisters, but I also put a lot of both of my sisters in them too. I feel like the two of them are kind of a combination of all three of us. We have an older brother too, who I really adore, but I feel like I needed to say that now because I am going to be talking about sisters a lot. Shout out to him. But I think there that Abby kind of has this like lawlessness and courage that in my head was sort of like our littlest sister Lily, and Savvy has this like very deep loyalty to her friends and kind of love for order and logic that I ascribe more to our middle sister Maddie. And I feel like they're the ways that they're very similar and the ways that they're very different were all just sort of inspired by the three of us. I feel like I took all of our personality traits and kind of shook them in a jar and was like, here we go. We're going to separate out into two of you. And that's sort of how that happened.
Do they know this? Like, do they know that they're the inspiration?
They do now.
They're great characters. So, it's an honor, really.
Love you guys.
I want to kind of backtrack a little bit because I think this time last year, TweetCute came out, which is your debut novel. Very exciting, very different times to be releasing a debut book. I would like to know how that was different from writing your second published book.
So Tweet Cute was very different because I tweeted the idea for Tweet Cute before I was writing a completely different book. I think it was like I can't even remember what it was. I was like in the middle of writing something else, and I tweeted this idea. I did finish that. I should figure out what it was. And I tweeted that idea, and a bunch of people were like, "This should be a book," and I was like, "Dibs!" So for that, it was kind of an interesting thing where I was very excited about it, but also very stressed out at the same time because a lot of people have independently had the idea for Tweet Cute in the time since, not knowing that Tweet Cute, like I see people tweet every day some idea for like 2 social media managers getting into a fight online and not knowing they're falling in love in real life. And that's the premise of Tweet Cute. So I knew that if I wanted it to be a book, then I would have to write it very, very quickly. So it was just complete lawlessness. I was like, we are going to get up at 5 a.m. We're going to just bang this whole thing out.
Oh my God.
And then editing, because that's important.
Yeah.
So, writing Tweet Cute was sort of just like a kind of a blur to me. And there was also no guarantee it was going to get published. It was one of those things where I was like, gosh, like, I'm sure as a writer, it's like, you never know if the things you write are going to end up, getting sold. And, so You Have a Match was very different because Tweet Cute was sold in a 2-book deal. So I knew it was happening and that it would be out in the world. So there was kind of that sense of calm, and like I knew what the timelines were. Like I had like deadline. I love a deadline. Oh,
good.
So there was like so much. I feel like there was a little more calm writing it, but also a little more difficulty because there was like now, when you're writing before something's sold, you're like, whatever, and now it's like, oh, like, no, like this is like a something that other people know about already and like have thoughts about, and that, is great, but is new when you're living inside your own head for a really long time.
Yeah. Like I have pitched this idea. People know that it's coming and now I have to write it.
Yeah.
Was one harder to write than the other?
I would say You Have a Match was a lot harder to write.
Oh, really? Because of the deadline?
No, I think it was just, I think it was because the relationships in it were a lot more complicated in some ways. And I think it was also because I really, really wanted to do justice to this place where I grew up, and to, my own siblings, and because it was their childhood too. And so I think there was a lot of it was unexpectedly like personal in regards to the setting, and then just trying to be very careful about all of the family dynamics and the romantic dynamics. And, I feel like with Tweet Cute, I was a little bit like, wee, and with this, like still wee, but also like cautious wee.
Yeah, rein it a little bit.
Yeah. Woo.
Not flying so high, but you're still flying. Oh, that's so fun. Like Tweet Cute, You Have a Match also contains romance. I love Leo as a character personally, and I would like to know, just because reading You Have a Match, I was like, this just really feels like a sister book, but going in, did you know that you wanted to have that romance element in it?
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm never going to be able to help myself with. I love romantic plots. I love romantic subplots. I just, for this, I don't know if they're always necessary for a happy ending or for driving a plot along or for all the things that people use romance for. But for me, it's just real fun to write. Like, I love that kind of, and especially writing YA, a lot of it is like first love and like, it's feelings are very strong and very new and very deep. And it's just a lot of fun to write.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think romance is so fun, especially when there's a lot of like things that happen, like miscommunication or fights.
Yes,
It's fun to write.
we live for the drama.
We do. We live for it. We love it. Okay. So if I keep looking down just because I don't want to lose my train of thought with these questions, and I want to be able to ask you everything I want to ask you. So I'm on a track here. Going back to the sisterhood aspect, there's a lot of internal comparison with your two characters, Abby and Savvy. They're comparing each other. They're comparing themselves to each other in certain ways. It's a relationship that's new to both of them because they both just discovered each other and discovered all the ways that they're so different from each other. And it causes a lot of internal conflict, I think, for both characters. Is that something you like intentionally set out to explore?
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting is I feel like that was something that I wanted to explore that really had nothing to do with my actual siblings because it's funny because a lot of our interests overlap, but we're like, we're not competitive and we're not, you know, it's like I kind of, you know, writing this book, it did make me really appreciate the dynamic of the siblings in our family is we're all very supportive and encouraging of each other and, you know, understand very deeply each other's talents and abilities. And, but, you know, the thing I wanted to explore was sort of the moments in my life where I have felt very compelled to compare myself to other people. It's people I don't know very well because you don't know their innate, you know, talents. You don't know how hard they worked for something. You don't have the background picture the way you do with your actual siblings. And, you know, I think that was a kind of a thing I wanted to explore where it was like, what if you did meet, what if the person that you met who was a stranger to you was your sibling? Like, I think, you know, I was thinking to myself the other day, like if I met like any of my siblings, not, you know, just like as strangers, like I would absolutely be intimidated by them. Like, some part of me that would be like very, you know, just like intimidated and all the things that Abby and Savvy are to each other in the beginning when they don't understand where the other one's coming from. And so that was sort of like a very fun thing to kind of dig into and be like, you know, what if like, you know, I'm the first time I heard my sisters sing, they have beautiful voices. What if the first time I heard them sing, my thought was like, oh man, I have to get into an audition hall after them, you know? And that's sort of where this kind of interesting dynamic came up between the two of them, where, you know, even though they share an interest for photography, in very different ways, is still, you know, it's hard not to compare, you know, and you know, obviously sharing all of their DNA, it just sort of set up like a very interesting dynamic to explore. And it's fun to write.
Absolutely, because you bring up such great points, and that was such an interesting thought process to hear. And I think will resonate with so many people because we are human. We compare each other to people on the internet, to people on social media, to people we don't know. And you're absolutely right. Like we don't know their story. And sometimes it makes us feel not as great sometimes or like less than, but it was so interesting to read about and you have a match because as you know, as they're getting to know each other, we see them like understanding each other a bit more throughout the book, and it's such a great journey.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad it reflected.
Yes. I would love to pivot over to writing processes now. What type of writer are you? Are you like a plotter or a pantser? How do you write? When do you write? You said when writing Tweet Cute, you said you were getting up at like 5 a.m., which I like, so much applause to you. I tried that. It's just not for me, but I really, really admire and respect people that is their like something that like they can do.
I admire and respect people who can write at night and like focus, because that's when I'm like, my brain's like, it is 6 o'clock. We have peaced out. Like, don't knock. Like, so I feel like I'm on the other end of that. But in terms of plotting versus pantsing, I pantsed my whole life. I loved pantsing. I wrote a lot of fan fiction. And I just loved that I was like, it was very lawless. And there were no consequences because it wasn't real. I mean, it's real, to the fandom and everything. But Tweet Cute, I think and I pantsed some of my own stuff too, but Tweet Cute was the first one where I really had to blend plotting and pantsing because there were so many forms of communication where they were talking on Twitter and on the secret app and in real life. And I had to like keep track. I had like an Excel spreadsheet of like, well, they know each other about each other when they're talking on this, but they don't, it was like very like, so in that degree, I had to start plotting. And now the more that I write, the more aggressive of a plotter I become. It like gets to the point where I'm like writing the outline and I'm like, I'm just going to start writing the dialogue for it. Like in the plot outline. Yeah. I'm like, nobody wants this yet, but like, here it is. Like, I get like very, very specific. And I find that it has made, some parts of it a little less, it makes the plotting itself a little stressful, but once I'm actually writing, I'm much less likely to, is it just me or is there like a void between like 30,000 and 50,000 words where like your brain's like,
like, I think I could feel that because that's maybe like you've reached the midpoint at like maybe that's it. I'm not sure, but I definitely know what you mean.
Yes. I could be going in the right direction or I could have like completely like the entire road could have turned around on me. I feel like the plotting has helped with that a little bit.
That's good. So when you plot, do you start with an idea and you're like, I know the beginning and the end and I have to figure out the middle, or you're just like, I have this idea and I'm just going to like try and figure it out as I go along?
I think I generally have right off the top, I'll have like a premise and like the main character. And then I don't usually know how it ends until I've like set up a ton of, because I feel like with contemporary YA, especially with like things with like romance, you want to set up a lot of conditions early on that make the ending satisfying.
Yeah.
And so for me, I like setting the conditions first and then sort of being like, and what would be the very satisfying conclusion to those? So basically make up a ton of desserts and then bring it around in the end.
Yeah. And by the way, everyone, no spoilers, but You Have a Match does have a very cute and satisfying ending. So no worries there.
I hope it's satisfying. And there's also a lot of food. So
yes. I want to go back to something you said. And you might have talked about this when promoting Tweet Cute, but I would love to hear you talk a little more about it, which is writing fan fiction. And is that how you got started writing books? Yeah.
I mean, I've been writing. I've got my emotional support Spider-Man with me. He's so small.
So tiny.
I've been writing fan fiction. I mean, probably since I was about 9, but not posting until I was probably 12. Because I was writing fan fiction before I like knew what it was. I was like mad that Merry and Pippin didn't get enough time in the Shire, and I was like, well, I'm just going to write about their adventures. I was like, if no one else is going to do it. So that's kind of how writing started for me. And, it just had like all these piles of notebooks. And I think my sister Maddie had to show me that like what upload even meant. I had no idea like what these buttons did. And that was a very exciting time for me and continues to be because I never stopped. Because like, it was just like a community of people who were writing because they couldn't not, it's like, you're writing for the love of it and you're also writing because you literally just can't not. And that was such a great way for me to understand things that I loved to write and things that people reacted to positively and things that like, I could write a chapter and be like, oh, not a lot of people reviewed this one because in fan fiction, you really only review if you're saying something nice. And then I would write something else and like a lot of people would be like, next chapter, please. And you're like, oh, okay, like that's the thing that people like, I think that's also important to know because as an author, you really want to make sure that you are giving people something satisfying. You know, I've always said it when I write, I want my books to be like a very large, satisfying piece of cake. Specifically the red velvet cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory. If we're getting into specifics. You know, and that was just it was like a jungle gym. You know, I had a lot of mentors on fan fiction that I will never know the real names of and probably never meet, who really, you know, were so kind to me when I first started out. And that sort of just evolved into, I think I got so deeply, intensely into the Spider-Man fan fiction universe that at one point when I was like 23 and about 500,000 words into that project, like probably written more than 4 million words of fan fiction now, but people were like, you should, you know, if you're going to be doing this, you should just try to write a book. And I was like, on purpose? Like, so that's how I started writing books. I think Tweet Cute was probably the 6th full book that I wrote. So there's a lot of practice.
That's honestly such like high praise to be like, you've written all this stuff. People like it. Go write something original that people can read. Like, I don't know. I can't, that seems like high praise.
They were very nice. And if any of you are here tonight, because I know some of the Spider-Man fan fiction fandom universe, we have revealed ourselves to each other. Thank you for being still putting up with me.
And then pivoting from fan fiction to your publishing journey, and you said this was like the Tweet Cute was this about the 6th book that you wrote, and we're serious about getting published. How was that journey for you? Because it's different for everyone. Publishing is such a wild journey for everyone.
Really a wild one. Gosh, it was interesting. You know, it's like, it's one of those things where I look back and I'm like, this was how it was supposed to happen. But I initially I wrote like a very, lot of like more, not contemporary YA. I was writing, more like fantasy driven things. And then I was writing adult contemporary romance, and my now editor of Tweet Cute, hi Alex, she read something of mine and was like, you know, Emma has a very like YA driven voice. Has she tried writing YA? And that was like, I don't know why that didn't, you know, that was something that didn't click to me earlier, because every fandom I was in was like, Spider-Man is like the most YA a superhero fandom can get. And I was writing for were like teenagers, you know, like, so it was like a very like, after it just like was like one of those things where your brain just clicked, and I was like, oh, like this is so much more fun, and the plots come to me a lot easier, and I, you know, I feel a lot more in my element, and that was sort of a condition that happened right when the idea for Tweet Cute happened, and so it was sort of like, that's sort of how that became a YA, and ended up being the book that sold in the end. So it was a long, you know, I think the first full book I wrote, I finished when I was 22 or 3.
Oh, wow.
And it took, oh man, math. I started writing, so I'd never have to do this. Yep. I think it was probably 4 or 5 years after that Tweet Cute sold.
Oh, wow. So, well, fantasy, adult, contemporary, YA. Do you have a genre outside of YA that you're like, I would love to explore this one day, like as a published book, now that I've kind of like dipped my toes in all of these things?
Oh yeah, all of them. Like
all of them.
Like I plan on writing contemporary YA for as long as I possibly can. But you know, there are like a lot of authors that I really admire who are also dipping their hands into other things, other genres right now, and I'm sort of like watching like from the sidelines, being like, someday.
Yeah.
So I would love to, you know, explore other genres as well, probably adult contemporary and fantasy, but I mean, you know how it is. It's like one of those things where it's like the ideas come to you when they decide to come to you.
Yeah. Yep, definitely understand that. You've written for media websites for the last several years. Do you feel like that has helped you craft your voice in writing books?
Probably to some degree, yeah. I think if anything, it has given me a very strong writing ethic, because you and I met when we were like freelancing or like working for, we both posted a lot on BuzzFeed Community when we were there. And that was, we were very frequent posters, and and now we're both working at BuzzFeed now, and have been in digital media for a long time. And I think that sort of pace sort of puts you in a mindset where you're like, I'm writing now, and this is the thing that I'm focused on. And I am not somebody who focuses very easily, as you can tell by the very fast way that I talk and the aggressive pinkness and chaos of my room. But I feel like, with digital media, it's especially, the job I was working when I was writing Tweet Cute, that was a thing where I could be writing 4 to 5 articles a day, editing 10 other articles. And it was like, and, at that point it was like, you kind of train your brain in a certain way, and tone wise, I've been very lucky to work for places that I have gotten to very unabashedly just be my dweeby self. And it has made it a lot easier to it's funny because I write a lot in present tense, first person. And I do think that digital media has sort of made me that way, because that's when you're writing about, things very quickly, you kind of end up inserting yourself into it.
Yeah.
But so I think that would be it. I'm sure you can attest to the.
I do think like you have such a unique voice, and it's so fun and funny at the same time. I remember sorry, my dog is barking. Sorry, everyone. Here's the dogs outside. I remember when you were writing for Bustle, I would see your post come across my social media feed, and I would just read the headline, and I'm like, that sounds like something Emma wrote, and I would click on it, and there are some writers that I can tell, I'm like, that sounds like something that like this person, right? And I read the byline, and I'm like, oh, I was right. But I think it's very distinct, and it's very fun, and it's very funny, and I think your readers see that in your books too. So.
Oh gosh. I do love that feeling, though. I feel like digital media does get small enough at some point that I don't even need to see like what the link for the publication is, where I could just be like, I know who wrote that.
Speaking of writing in voice and tone, is there a piece of writing advice that has helped you throughout the years, or that you really like or took to heart?
Gosh. I think, a lot of people have just said to me along the way, like, just keep writing. And in some ways it's the least helpful advice, because you're like, and then what? But I think that was sort of maybe that's the, the thing that it all kind of comes down to. I, in terms of like very specific advice, I'm going to mispronounce his name. But the author of Call Me By Your Name, is it Andre Asaman? I met him like one time at a reading, and this was maybe like 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
No, this is 2 years. Math again. Ugh.
And time, like what is time anymore?
It was like at this kind of like very small event in New York that I was like, I honestly, it was like so kind of like under the radar that I was like, is this real? Like, and he just, he was like, he said something along the lines of, if you're not enjoying what you're writing, you shouldn't be writing it. And that has stuck with me in kind of a big way, because there have been, even just like in the day to day, if I ever find myself dreading a scene that I have to write, or not looking forward to writing on a certain day, sometimes it's just my brain being real lazy. But other times I'm like, oh, if I've not been happy with this 3 days in a row, then maybe there's something wrong with the thing that I am trying to do here. And I should find a way if I can find a way to enjoy writing it, maybe it'll be better off.
Yeah, that is very great advice. Especially right now when things are so tumultuous, doing something and loving what you're doing is like extremely important. Okay, so I think I have one more question for you. but I can keep going if we're not ready for audience questions. But my final question that I had for you was a fun question, and I think you'll like it. Which Taylor Swift song defines Abby and which defines Savvy?
OMG. Okay. So I am ready to go because I do have playlists for both of them that are going to be released at some point. I'm very excited. But specifically for Abby, I would say This Is Me Trying from Folklore. And for Savvy, I would say Mirror Ball. And that was Lily and I were discussing that. My sister Lily and I were discussing that. And that was like one that we were kind of mad at ourselves for not seeing right off the top, because it is very like, she's an Instagram person and she's, thinking a lot about what people think of her, not just in terms of like followers, but what her parents think of her and like what her friends think of her and what people who are like following her on Instagram and maybe looking up to her are thinking of her. And that's, sort of the crux of Mirror Ball is like this like feeling of like kind of performing for a lot of angles at once. And This Is Me Trying is just sort of Abby's song, I think, because I feel like that's sort of her whole theme of the book is she's like, I'm trying.
I think those are perfect songs for both of them. You really nailed it.
I would say overall, though, I feel like Out of the Woods is both of their song. And that's literally and figuratively because they're out of the woods.
Do you have an album that you think defines Tweet Cute and You Have a Match?
Oh, like a Taylor Swift album?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of tone, I would say 1989 was very Tweet Cute's tone.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe some of the songs on Red. And I think that Folklore is, although it came out long after You Have a Match, I feel like they're spiritually, that's the album that belongs with You Have a Match. Yeah, I'm sticking to that answer.
Since Tweet Cute came out in January of 2020, and then of course You Have a Match came out today. Were you writing and editing You Have a Match all of last year, or was that done prior to 2020?
So that was done in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was editing. I was editing Tweet Cute and writing You Have a Match.
Okay.
In 2019, and then last year I was writing book 3.
Oh.
Also a very weird thing because it's like it's just I'm sure anyone who's written during the pandemic is like, it is like a very interesting thing where you're like, I'm writing a book that's going to come out in a very long time, and we don't know what the world's going to look like yet.
Yeah.
So that both of those experiences were very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And are you allowed to talk about your future projects?
Oh, yeah. It's on Goodreads. Okay. So I figure if somebody from Wednesday can say in the chat no.
Speak now, or
I have given them 3 seconds. Okay. Hi guys. What's on Goodreads right now is that the plot is it follows a described as loudmouthed Broadway hopeful who is competing for an internship with her rival classmate. This is all set in New York, as she tries to find 3 women who might potentially be her mom. And it's very cheeky and Mamma Mia-esque.
I was going to say, I feel the Mamma Mia vibes.
It's about it's basically like I took every album ABBA ever wrote and shoved it into a book. That's book 3.
That sounds so joyful and also fun. Oh, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me back. I am here to ask any questions that our wonderful audience has dropped in the Ask a Question tab. It's not too late. Please feel free to submit anything. So I'm going to start asking some questions and we'll go from there. This is for Emma. You've made recipes from Tweet Cute and given readers the recipes. Have you, or do you plan on making the recipes mentioned in You Have a Match?
I do. I'm very excited. There's at least one in the works. Well, one that we have, and by we, I mean my sister Lily. She's really the genius behind. I have these crazy harebrained baking and cooking ideas, and she's the one who like gently brings us back down to earth. And like, here's how we're going to do this without burning the house down. So thank you, Lily. There will be some recipes for You Have a Match forthcoming. So I hope that you guys enjoy them.
So what was your biggest inspiration when you wrote You Have a Match?
I guess first the DNA tests things going on just in the news in general. But I guess, I think a lot of it is just growing up with sisters. I'm really lucky, and my brother, love you, Evan. But I'm really lucky to have, and I'm sure Evan would say the same, to have been in a position where I watched these two human beings grow up. And I've known them from like the very beginning of their lives, and I get to watch, I get to like wonder who they're going to be, and then see who they're going to be. And that, I think anybody who has sisters or, and siblings in general can just speak to how unique and amazing of an experience that is. And I wanted to recreate that in a way and sort of explore, what if you didn't know? Could you have that kind of feeling with somebody if you didn't grow up together? And that's sort of what I kind of wanted to explore in this, because I do feel like sisterhood to some degree is, a lot of it is the sisters you grow up with and the sisters you're born with, and a lot of it is sisters you choose. And so I think that was some of the inspiration behind it too.
That's really sweet. Who would handle it better? Abby and Leo running the tweet cute social media accounts, or Pepper and Jack at You Have a Match summer camp?
Pepper and Jack are New Yorkers. They're not going to survive at summer camp. No, I'm sure they'd be fine. They would just be like a hostile takeover of the kitchen. But whoever asked that, like, woo, like, great question.
Very good.
I think that's my answer. I feel like Savvy would try to take over the Twitters, but she wouldn't be as funny. She would just be like, memes, this chaos, like, and I think maybe it would be a good little relaxing break for her to try to be doing the fast food kind of punches instead of more like Instagram kind of things. But that was a good question.
So this is a question for both of you. If you could co-write a book with any other author, who would it be?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question.
Everyone came up with their best questions tonight. So
yeah, they did. Oh my gosh, that I guess it would depend on the type of book that you're writing, right?
Yeah, I'm like trying to think. There's like, honestly, I feel like I would co-write with any of my other friends. Like,
yeah, like,
once you have been inside of each other's brains like long enough to be like, I think it's funny because I haven't really had to think about this. So I used to way back in the day. I used to songwrite. I lived in Nashville for a little bit, and I used to like co-write with people, and it's a very interesting experience. And I think it would be really fun to do what some of my friends have been doing, things where they swap chapters and like somebody writes one chapter and somebody else writes another one. And I think that would be a lot of fun to do with friends. But gosh, like so many people. What do you think?
I don't know. Wait, sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
It's really like the world is your oyster.
Yeah. I would probably just want to co-write with some of my friends.
For me, I think it's Stephanie Perkins was a big reason why I love YA contemporary and why I wanted to write it. And I don't think it would be me so much like wanting to co-write a book with her, because I would be too afraid I would mess everything up, because I think she's so great. But as you put it, pick their brains a little bit. I would like to pick her brain a little bit. I think that would be delightful.
Okay. Another question for both of you. Advice for writers in their late 20s.
Oh. As someone in her 30s, early 30s, I specifically late 20s writing advice.
Or any good writing advice that worked for you.
I think, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, I guess, be open to any kind of timeline for how this is going to go. You know, it's, I think, you know, part of it just goes back to write what you love, and to some degree write what you know, because then, and I only say that not to box anybody in, but I think sometimes writing what you know makes you appreciate the things that you know. And, you know, I certainly find that the more I write about things that I love and places that I love and things that interest me, the happier I am both writing and with enjoying those things. So I don't know if that's late 20s specific, but but that's sort of, I don't know, that's sort of what I do now. I have almost exactly 6 months before turning 30. So that's what I'm doing in this precise moment now, is writing things that bring me joy. So there's my advice.
I think, you know, it's so easy to compare yourself to other writers. We all do it. It's something, we're human. We're all guilty of doing it. And I think that's a lot of times can make us feel like very negative if we're not like where we want to be, because we see where someone else is and maybe like that's where we want to be. And I think it's good to have goals, and you should definitely set goals for yourself, but maybe don't set like, just don't be too hard on yourself. Speaking from someone who has set goals for things that I cannot control, maybe start by setting small goals for yourself that you can control. And when you reach them, you'll feel good. And I guess maybe an example of that would be like, in January, I'm going to try it and at least write 5,000 words on this new project that I really like. And that's something that you can control. And then it's manageable enough for you to like reach that goalpost, and just try and not play the comparison game. I think that would be my advice.
I love that. I especially love the small goals part. I think that's a huge part of it too, is like start with smaller goals and build up to, you know, even if the goal that you're building is just word count. I feel like that has always been like a, you know, sometimes I give myself little treats. If I'm like, you've made it to 30,000 words, I will take myself out to get a fancy cupcake.
And that's not to say don't have aspirations or like big dreams. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just,
but celebrate the little things, you know, it's like celebrate, you know, the hard work comes from the stuff you're doing, not the stuff that happens because of it. You know, it's sort of like, it's like, I say that as someone who's written many, many things that will never see the light of day. Yes. I still don't regret writing a single one of them. I'm so glad I have them, because it's sort of like looking back in a diary sometimes and being like, oh, like that's how I used to write. Or there are some parts of me that I'll always write that way. I think it's important to preserve parts of yourself that way too, even if you're not sure if anything's going to happen with it. It's a nice little time capsule.
Yeah, I love that.
This question is for Emma. Post-COVID, what New York City thing are you dying to do?
I can't say I've been deprived bakery wise. If anything, I have patronized bakeries even more aggressively because so many of them are so great about being like, here's some pickup, like where you can like order in advance. They'll be at the door, hand you the stuff. Shout out to Ore Washers. Like, can't tell you how many times I have Sprinkles cupcakes. I can't tell you how many times I've just like been like do. Like, I think what I would really, really love to do is browse bookstores for a long time. I want to like stand in front of a bookshelf at the Strand and just like be in everyone's way and just like be very under it. Like, I am reading the back of this book and I am going to be here for a while. Like, that's my dream, is just to browse in New York again. Because I will say most of my favorite things are outside. I love Central Park. I run in the park, when I'm in the city, I'm running in the park pretty much every day or walking, and I like walking along the East River. And so those things are still very much there for me. But I think just like unrepentantly browsing for a very long time is something I'm excited to do again. And go back to the office. I actually love the office, guys. Like, I love sitting in my little chair.
I miss the office people.
I have one that I will second also. Any advice for your younger fan fiction writing self?
For mine or for other fan fiction writers?
I think for other fan fiction.
Yeah. Writers. I was like, it's too late for her. She's gone. She's doing whatever she's gonna do. I think advice for other fan fiction writers. Gosh, take advantage of the things people are saying to you. Take advantage of each other. Like, I was really shy for the longest time about connecting with other fan fiction writers because, it was a different culture back then. People were very, very embarrassed about writing fan fiction. I remember somebody found out my username in high school and I was like, my life's over. Like, and like, I still don't advertise it, like, because I like to have things that are like for me. But now I'm like, it's my little treat. I wish that I had been much more vocal in those communities a little sooner, because it was such a progressive community, and like there were things that fan fiction was doing genre wise, and in terms of just like self-acceptance and like sex positivity and just like general ideals that I feel like are much more prominent in like, or at least much more things that we're like have much more of an eye on these days. I feel like the fan fiction community was like a huge step ahead, and it was so nice to get to learn from people and learn from other people's experiences and really connect and like make friends. So I think that would be my advice, is like make friends. Like I'm sure in these days, if you are a fan fiction writer, you're already doing that because you have the archive and you have Tumblr, and like those were such cool ways to make friends. And back in my day, there was just like fanfiction.net, and it was a little spookier to be like, here's my email. I'm a 13-year-old girl. Like, but I wish that when I'd gotten older, I wish that I had more immediately reached out and talked with people about, not just what we were writing, but our lives and running things past each other. And that's my advice.
I have one last question. It is for you both. Your favorite book and or author?
Oh gosh.
No, the impossible question.
Yeah. Oh man.
I mean, I feel like the first name that comes to mind is Rainbow Roll, because when I read Fangirl for the first time, I felt so seen. I was like, here is this girl writing fan fiction in the dark. Like, people are like, come socialize. And she's like, no, like, I am very deep into this fantasy thing. And also she writes for Marvel, and that's like my dream. And so I met her once and I really, really startled her. She was like, just in public, like existing as a human. And I was like, hi, a accosted her, and it was a very great moment for me. I was very excited, but I'm sure I terrified her. So that's my answer.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I am not sure. I feel like it changes so much. Over quarantine, I started reading a lot of Lisa Jewell, who's a British thriller writer, and I really love her books, and I think her audiobooks are great too. So I'll say that for right now, but it's just going to change every day for me.
And with that, that is the end of our event. Thank you, Emma Lord. Thank you, Farrah Penn, for joining us.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say to our wonderful audience before we sign off for the night?
Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for ordering books and for saying nice things in the chat. I've managed to see some of them. I'll fist bump to everyone. Hi. And thank you so much to the Strand for having us tonight. This, I'm sure these are very strange times for you guys too, and so it was just really cool to get to bounce back for the second event to do it again here. It's I love you guys so much, so it really meant a lot that you had us tonight.
I know, seconding this. The Strand is so iconic. I remember seeing my book there a few years ago, and I just have this picture of me pointing at it. I'm in the Strand and my book's here. What a moment. But yes, just seconding everything Emma said. It was such a lovely time, and you guys are such a great bookstore. And you guys are such a great audience. I kept catching people just being so nice and kind and singing high praise to Emma, which she absolutely deserves. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. If you haven't already bought your copy of You Have a Match, you can purchase it at the purchase button at the bottom of the screen. And with that, thank you for joining us. Good night, everybody.